Hello, my name is Will Barron. Welcome to this week's Seller Made Simple Academy live chat. If you are new to these live chats, I will answer your sales, business, entrepreneurship, life, whatever it is, questions. If you want to leave a question, just drop it in the box that'll be below this, the live chat box. If you're watching it live, if you're watching this retrospectively, then leave a comment below this video, wherever it's on LinkedIn, YouTube, wherever it is, and we'll go back over some of those questions today as well. In fact, I will actually do that because I say that every week and then I never look back over the questions. I just lie to you. So I'll pull that up now so I don't forget to do it in a minute. So we'll start with some of the questions from the Seller Made Simple Academy members, and then I'll jump into your live questions as well. We'll go for, what time is it? We'll go for about half an hour, 45 minutes or so. Then we'll wrap things up because I will be recording with Victor Antonio this week in sales straight after this. Usually I do this live chat after I record with Victor. This week I've got some stuff on, and so I need to do it beforehand. Okay, so let me jump into your questions. Michelle asks, my question is management less stressful than sales? Sorry, I'm just looking at the levels, make sure that we have audio. I think we do. My question is, from Michelle, is management less stressful than sales? I've been pretty successful in my sales career so far, and I can handle the stress pretty well, but I have a new baby on the way. Congratulations, Michelle. That's awesome. I have a new baby on the way, and my life is about to get a lot more busy. So I don't have much, any sales management experience. I do have experience of managing, I think the team's now 13 people over at salesman.org. Everyone is remote. Just for context, as I start to reply to this answer, and I find management is way less stressful than selling. And there's a very simple reason for this. And that is because I have more control of all of the variables. If I ask someone to do a task, a project, if I delegate something, if I ask someone to come up with some ideas, give us a report back on something that we've been working on over the past month, 6 months, whatever it is, I'm asking a team member to do that work. And so there's a certain amount of, social pressure, but also just they don't want to get sacked, fired. There's hierarchical pressure on them as well to get the job done. And so there's less variables than you trying to do a deal. Even if you're offering incredible amounts of value to a potential customer, well, there's nothing to say that they're not having a baby right now and you don't know about it or whatever's going on in the background. And so there's variables there that you can't control, and that stresses me out. I wouldn't say I'm a control freak, but I like things to be, this is probably the definition of a control freak. I like things to be in order. I like things to be documented. I like there to be lists, bullet points, just so everyone's on the right page. And it's difficult to do that in sales. And that's what the skill is, because sales is fundamentally a person-to-person game as opposed to, and I guess management is person-to-person, but there's more of a structure there versus modern B2B sales. Now, for you, Michelle, that could mean anything. So take that with a pinch of salt. You might like the fact that you're engaging with buyers that are not in the office, who are not looking over your shoulder, who are not doing this, and gossiping behind the scenes. Not that we do that at salesman.org, but in large corporations, large organizations, I know you work for a large company, Michelle, that might be something that goes on. So it could be one or the other. Do you love building something, or do you love communicating value, ideas, and pitching? I guess maybe that's how I would split it up. If you find one less stressful than the other, then you're probably on the right track one way or another. Okay. Lauren Bailey asks, how long did it take you to master, quote unquote, master making your content and specifically the YouTube stuff? Thanks, Will. Lauren, I'm trying not to humble brag here. I think our YouTube content is pretty good. I think the studio is pretty cool. We've got all the different camera angles, all that kind of stuff nailed. But I don't feel like we've certainly not mastered this, because although we're one of like the biggest and fastest growing sales YouTube channels, if you want to, so let me put this another way. Mastery is dependent on how you're measuring mastery, right? So we make a ton of money through people watching these live streams, all of the podcast content, all of the sales training specific content, and there's even more of that coming over the next few months as we've hired a bunch of writers in the past couple of weeks who are just going to be churning out content for me to use the auto cue and essentially read out to you. This content is my ideas, but written better than I can write it, so it should be great content. Now, if you measure our YouTube videos success on number of leads generated each week, specifically from YouTube, number of sales of the Seller Made Simple Academy each week from very specifically YouTube, we're doing killer. We're doing great. It's maybe the audio podcast is more effective, but it's also been going longer than the YouTube side of things at driving leads, at driving revenue within salesman.org with our sales training programs. But the YouTube's killing it. Now, alternatively, if you measure YouTube success and mastery on number of views per video, we suck. This live chat might get 300, 400, 500 views, which is a drop in the ocean. It's nothing. It is literally essentially zero as far as YouTube is concerned. We've got, what are we on now? 49,400 subscribers, right? Nothing. There's tons of channels that have way more subscribers than we have. My man Victor Antonio he's edging in on 200,000 subscribers, right? So we're like 4 times less masterful and successful if you go on those metrics if I compare myself and the man Victor Antonio. So it depends what you mean by mastery. But what was your actual question? How long does it take you to master? How long did it take you? If you do anything 100 times, this is the rule I always give when salespeople, what you're asking here is a content creation question, right, Lauren? You need to be prepared to do something 100 times, 100 videos, 100 podcast episodes before it's not going to suck. If you're not going to do 100, you shouldn't do 1. So you shouldn't say, I'll do 5 and see how I feel. You should commit to doing 100 or not doing it all. This goes back to something that we talk about in our training all the time. This idea of it's either hell yeah or don't do it. Make your life dead simple. If you're not like hell yesing the things in your life, whether that be your career, your family, activities, hobbies, if you're not hell yeah, then you probably should just not do it. And that will leave more space to find those hell yeah things that you really want to do. So if you're thinking about starting a YouTube channel, drop a note in the community and we can jump on a call and go back and forth and discuss it, Lauren. And number 2, you've got to be prepared to do 100 videos that nobody watches, that drive no attention in the marketplace, that I'm assuming here you want to do this for your sales career, that no buyers are going to see before you'll start to get a few popping. Maybe 101, maybe it's 221. But you need to get that first 100 done before you're going to see momentum. Okay. You're going to see me drinking loads of tea today because I don't want to have no voice when I'm screaming at Victor Antonio later on when we record This Week in Sales, which you can find over at thisweekinsales.com. Okay, Stuart asks, it'd be great to see you go through the sales coach training live and see how many you get right. I think I can do this. So if I pull it up. So this is the laptop I'm reading the questions from, right? So here's my man, Stuart. So this is the Seller Made Simple Academy. I'll not plug it, but I'll give you context of what it is. So here, if you go to, this is just the user dashboard. You can see everything that's going on. There's the dashboard. There's the sales code assessment. I'll just show you while I'm talking about it here. So it tells you whether you've got the traits of high performers, the traits of a high performing salesperson or not. Then you get training, which goes through the traits, sales process, so how to upsell customers, the platform building, which we talk about all the time on the shows, influence, all that kind of stuff. And then there's the practice element. Now, when I click start practice here, hopefully it should work. This will be embarrassing if it doesn't. It'll start to bring up these scenarios. So this is one of the frameworks that we teach in the Seller Made Simple Academy. So I'll go through a couple of these here to tick this box that I know what I'm talking about. So what step is missing from the framework? It is scarcity. Hurrah. And there's different scenarios. I've not actually been through this training on this account. This is just a demo account that I use for communicating with the Academy members. So within this part of the product, in the practice section, the sales coach, there are what we have here, which are pretty simple, getting the missing step of the frameworks correct, And there's also scenarios. You'll see one in a second. If Sam walked into the room, this happened, what should he do next? I'm going to get 10 out of 10 here. Rules, sales pitch, uncover the reality gap, of course. This is also amazing content for anyone who's listening to this on audio. So here's a scenario. Walter asks Sam if he's uncovered Harry's reality gap. What does this mean? The reality gap is that A, follow along if you're listening on the audio, A, the gap between the buyer's current reality and their future reality, or B, reality gap, where the market is and the reality the buyer lives in, is A. So I won't go for any more of these because I'm not sure this is great content for you guys, but that's Settlement Simple Academy, and there's your answer. And let's now run through some of your live questions. Supercar Petrol asks, what would you consider a normal turnover rate? I got an offer to be an AE, account executive, at this company, but the average tenure for a sales rep there is 15 months. Yes, that is unless there is a role for them to step onto, as in people are, I'll finish with the tenure for the sales rep at this company is 15 months. Is this red flag? Thank you. Yes, it is a terrible red flag. Now, unless what's happening is there is a senior account role or there is another, I don't know what, I'm trying to play both sides of this here to give this organization some credit. But yeah, unless there's the role that after 15 months, a lot of people are stepping up into, a senior role, customer success role, whatever it is, unless that's the case, 15 months is a shocker. Like, you can't control the amount of time that salespeople stay in an organization, especially when we're doing this dance of everyone starts at SDR, then we get to account manager, then senior account manager, or kind of global positions or product specialists, whatever it is, and we've got this hierarchy. Now, this hierarchy is a bit weird because surely you want the best SDRs, the people who are most capable of researching, connecting, communicating, and booking meetings. Surely you want those individuals to stay as SDRs and become even more specific over time. So this is why all things get a bit weird. But yeah, unless that's in the case where people are bouncing from one to the other and there's that clear, assumedly clear pattern of movement up, 15 months is terrible. And for you, Supercar Petrol, from YouTube, you've got to stay in a sales role for a couple of years. You have to, otherwise you're never going to get the benefits of it. You're going to half-arse it. You're going to get from step A to step C when you're trying to get to Z. And a lot of the benefits come from that longer period of time. Oh, and I guess the other thing is, if it's a startup company, then they might, as in like a small team, a team of 20, a team of 30, you're the second, you're the third sales hire, then obviously that number doesn't have much data to back it up. So could mean anything, could mean nothing. Cool. What else do we have? Misha asks, Dear Will, have you left Spotify? Unintentionally, we're not on Spotify. It will come back as soon as I suss out what the problem is, and we need to get our feed back on there. Because a lot of our older content is still there and still available. So Spotify clearly has the Salesman.org podcast feed accessible because it streams the content through our feed. But yeah, you can't search for us on there anymore. So I'm sorry about that. That is essentially, I guess, a customer service problem that we need to resolve. Savio says, hi, Will. Hello, mate. Yes, Thank says, hi. Hello. Hello to you as well. Okay, what else do we have? Tra-la-la-la-la-la. Michael asks... Michael asked last week, I remember this. Michael last week asked, what are my negative beliefs? This week, Michael asks, what are my positive beliefs? I appreciate the question. I don't believe that anything is possible, but I believe that anything within reason is possible. And this is a little bit of like thick-headedness from my perspective, a little bit of hard-headedness in that I genuinely believe if I actually want to do something, I can find a way to achieve it. Right? We're working really hard on the salesman.org website, blog, content, going back through every show note or every podcast episode and redoing every show note that we've ever done. It's like 1,000 pages of content. It's costing me we've talked about it on the podcast before with one of the com team reached out to me and he got the deal for the transcriptions. It's costing me like nearly 30 grand to get these transcriptions done. All back on the premise that I want to build such a beast of a website that it allows me to sell the company at some point in the future, 5-10 years from now. And then all the building has been worth it, right? Now, I've got this belief that someone is going to want to buy the business. It's a belief. I don't and there's people have tried to buy it in the past. So there is some evidence. Maybe this isn't a great example. But I believe in that so positively and so strongly. I'm willing to take what would be the cash for the GTR, what would be just a series of epic holidays for me and my missus, right? And I'm willing to put that back into the business. So a positive belief that I have is that I can achieve essentially within reason. Clearly, I'm not going to go and play in the NBA. Way too short, way too old. But I believe I could play in a pretty decent basketball team if I got the right training, the right nutrition, fitness, maybe not pro, but I feel like I could do a reasonable job. And I've not played basketball in 15 years. So some of this is optimism. Some of this is just pure thick-headedness of I can just break through boundaries. I'll find a way. And I feel like that is a pretty serious positive belief that I have. I don't know where it came from. I have no idea where it came from. No one ever taught me that. No one ever sat down and told me that. But I think it's an important thing to have in sales, in that there's been tons of times my back has been up against the wall. I've been under quota. There's a month left, 6 weeks left, and most of the deals that I was doing medical devices were a reasonable deal size, and so it took not a month, it took 6 months, a year to get the deals done. There was tons of times that by just being thick-headed enough to just go, hey, I'm going to do this, we're going to find a way, that a way appears, right? Okay. Supercar Petrol, the main man, the main question asker, asks, hey, Will, another question. What do you think are the biggest differences between selling in Europe versus selling in America? Do you think selling in the US is easier, less red tape? I'm not convinced there is much difference, right? Now, if, let's say Victor Antonio, right? Main man, I'm sure he would adapt, right? I'm not saying that he would struggle to sell in the UK at all. He would, within an instant, adapt. But if he came in to a room, or I'll use Victor as an even more literal example. And I'm sure he would agree with at least some of this, or the premise of this. Victor is incredible on stage, right? One of the world's top sales motivational speakers, just is fact. Tons of evidence tons of testimonials, tons of happy customers to prove that. Him jumping on a stage in the US and then taking that exact presentation and doing it to a corporate B2B crowd in the UK, I'm sure the people in the UK, in Europe, would be like, who's this just loud American bouncing around on stage? But he's trying to get audience participation. I don't really want to be standing up and getting involved in this. I'd rather just sit there and make notes. So that'd be an example of the difference. Now, clearly Victor could come along, retune, recalibrate immediately and do a separate presentation. But I feel like that translates to the rest of B2B sales. If you're in the US, I find I can be a bit more brash, a bit more jokey. I can be more direct with, and it's only slight. It might be 5 to 10%, right? I can take the piss more. I can have a bit more banter. I can go back and forth. Whereas in the UK, people want to know the product, the offer, the price. And then after that, maybe you can have a little bit of banter and rapport with them. So that would be the only difference. Clearly, there's differences in currencies, in banking, in contract agreements, negotiations, what's appropriate, what isn't. But on the super high level, and you can feel free to ask another question, Supercar Petrol, to drill down if there's something specific that you want me to answer. But on a high level, it's just the amount of loudness and brashness. That's the difference between US markets and European UK markets in my experience. Okay. How do I get the previous live streams up? Because I know there's always a bunch of questions that I promise to answer and then I never do. Okay. Kieran asks, this is from last week's show. I'm in my first sales job. Tell me one thing that will let me form a very good relationship on the very first day I'm sent to meet a prospect. So you got to think about first impressions, right? Are you dressed appropriately? If you're going in and selling financial services I know this sounds so basic and stupid, right? But I have salespeople pitch me, like do demos with me for different products and services. And we're pretty rapidly expanding, as I mentioned earlier on, our blog content, our writing content, some of our video content at the moment. So I'm doing a bunch of hiring and different things. If you don't dress appropriately, if you're selling financial services to a bank and you're not wearing a suit that is at least as smart as the person that you're presenting to, then that's going to leave a terrible taste in their mouth. It isn't necessarily about leaving a good impression in that first instance. It's about not ruining the first impression, right? It's about not adding a number of negatives. It's about just being as neutral as possible before you can engage, go back and forth, and use your Chiron, your charm, your wit, whatever it is, to build rapport, person to person with the individual. So make sure you're dressed appropriately. Make sure you're on time. I'm a proper stickler for people who are late for anything, whether it's our team delivering stuff late when there's not an excuse. I go pretty apeshit internally and then try not to show that externally, and then try and guide them and help them be more, whether it's setting longer deadlines or whatever it is. But it really, and they probably know this, they see this when they communicate with me. The team aren't thick, right? But it really annoys me when things are not done to a deadline that I've let someone else set. So if you're showing up to a meeting, make sure you're 10 minutes early. Even if you just sat there in the lobby on your phone, playing Angry Birds or whatever is the current popular game, whatever it is, make sure that you're early. Dressed appropriately, early, smile, big handshake, and that's all you can really do. Maybe this all really starts with the prep before the meeting itself as well. You're coming across professional. You're being very clear as to the agenda for the meeting, why you sat down. Turn up to that meeting. I'm assuming this is in-person meetings here, Karen, I don't think I've got one in front of me. I usually have one in my bag. A leather binder, splurge a little bit on it, spend some money, get it smart one, and have your agenda printed off for you and the buyer. The buyer probably doesn't want a copy. They probably don't care. But as soon as you sit down then with the buyer, you're in control. And this is a line I've just covered in some training in the Seller Made Simple Academy that we recorded the other day. This is a line I like to use when I sit down with people for the first time. I go, hey, after the pleasantries, I go, hey, well, this is how the meeting usually works, or this is how these presentations usually go. And the buyer might go, okay, that's great, but I want to do this, and this, and this. And you just turn around and go, okay, well, this is how these presentations usually go. And I'll do this 2, 3, 4 times, and eventually the buyer will just sit back, let me take responsibility for the meeting, takes the pressure off their shoulders, and then obviously I'm in control of how things are moving as well. So there's 4 or 5 steps for you. I hope that is useful. And yeah, that's how I would show up and start rocking and rolling in in-person meetings. Okay, what else do we have? I'm incredibly prepared today, as you can all tell. These live chats are actually doing quite well. As I go through them on YouTube, they're getting as many views as a lot of the other content, which is good. These live chats are the easiest content to put together that we do. Okay. Oh, Omnane, I'm definitely mispronouncing your name, sir. I apologize. Omnane asks, thanks for the live session. What is the best technique to market a travel-related product in these bad times for the industry? I would... you're marketing a product. You said market rather than sell a product, right? I would look at I would do 2 things. One, I would be working to a date that I know things are going to be opening up. Now, this could be 2 years from now. It could be 18 months from now. It could be 6 months from now, whatever it is. The moment that the marketplace opens up for international travel properly, because I know in the UK, we've got this traffic light system, and then you've got to be double vaccinated. You've got to then do the COVID tests when you land every couple of days, when you come back every couple of days. So once all that dies down, which eventually will, right? I'll be working backwards from that date. You're talking about, you said marketer as opposed to sales, so I'll go down that route slightly. I would be forcing myself to work backwards from that date and say, hey, on that date, within that next quarter, within that next month, I'm going to pull back everything that I'm definitely going to lose right now. And I'd be building goodwill. I'd be getting in touch with people. I'd still be doing my prospecting, but I wouldn't be pushing a sale. I wouldn't be really pushing an agenda. Now, this is difficult. This is painful. This is something that I've practically not had to do before because our product is somewhat ubiquitous. Salespeople always need training. Great salespeople still need more training if they want to become, go from good to great to awesome to remarkable and beyond, right? So I've not literally been in this scenario. But with that said, set that date. I'd go, well, I'm going to lose here. What can I do to make sure that this next stint is a massive win? And I'd be building a massive database of people. I'd be emailing, cold calling, social selling, on LinkedIn, whatever it is, and asking the question, hey, when do you think you're going to be traveling again? Or when do you think this travel-related product is going to be useful for you? I'd be documenting that in a CRM, and I'd be following up on those dates that they've given us. I'd be using that social proof. I'd be using that influence principle of commitment of, hey, you said 6 months ago that on this date, at this time, after this change, this would be now appropriate for you. Do you want to have a quick chat about it? And I'd be and this might end up being even better for you in the long run. I'd just be spending a month, 2 months, 12 months if possible, just prospecting, building that list so that when you do get back into the game, you can just absolutely kill it. You're just going to have you might suck it up now. You might end up just on base, no commissions if you're in selling, marketing, however you're financially compensated. But then a year from now, you're just going to dominate it. You're going to be way over target. You're going to be crushing it. So that's what I would be pushing towards. Okay. Alex asks, when is the next live session? Alex, every Thursday, around about this time. It's usually 6 p.m. GMT, but I'm a bit earlier today. Because my missus is going out for a meal and I've got to look after the dog later on. So that's why I'm doing it before I record with this Week in Sales with Victor. Okay. Sammy asks, will cold calling become totally irrelevant or just decline slowly over time? So you got to be careful with this. And I've fell into this trap a few times as well, right? Of cold calling, what is that defined by? If cold calling is, right, me getting my phone, going online, finding a random database of VPs of marketing who run companies of this size in this market, and I just start dialing, or probably more likely you've got an auto dialer and you've got a headset on, it's like going back and forth, it's just smashing out these numbers. If that's what you consider and that's what you define as cold calling, then it's going to come to an end pretty quick because those direct dial numbers are going to become harder and harder to find. Organizations, we know, it, you've experienced this, it's interrupting your actual productive work. Organizations at some point are going to start spoofing their own numbers to stop people direct dialing into them. It's going to become, and just the literal nature of most people aren't working from an office anymore. People who are working from an office don't have an office phone. They don't have a direct line to their desk. They're on the mobile. When they leave, the mobile goes to someone else. This data is going to become scattered. It's going to become a complete mess over the next 5-10 years. So that definition of a cold call, of course, it's going to just gradually become less and less effective. And at a certain point, you're going to have to do so many calls to drive so little revenue that it's not going to pay the staff and the technology costs in the revenue that comes in, or even the profit that comes in. And so economically, it's just not going to be viable anymore. And there's a couple of big banks that have cut back completely. It's been in the news recently. A couple of weeks ago, they're cutting back completely on their cold calling efforts. And so they're seeing this firsthand because they might have had 200, 300, 1,000 people in multiple buildings, multiple sites, doing these cold calls, trying to upsell current customers, close new customers. And if they're struggling, that'll trickle down to the rest of the industry eventually. With that said, Sammy, of course, picking up the phone during the sales process, if you've not spoke to the buyer before, is never going to die, right? if I have to ring 3 numbers to get through to the right person who I've just sent an email to, I've connected with them on LinkedIn, they've liked some of my posts, we've gone back and forth, I've seen that they've been on our website, they've downloaded this white paper, that white paper, they've asked a question to customer service, but they declined a salesperson to call. Of course, I'm going to freaking call that person, right? I'm going to hound them essentially, because I know that they must be so far along the buying cycle that if I don't get in touch right now, I'm not going to be able to shape the rest of the buying journey. It's going to happen organically, and then it's out of my hands. It's down to how well the business is set up, the marketing materials and all that stuff as well. So I'm going to get on the phone with them. I'm going to chase them up. And so is that a cold call if they've had that much contact with us already? I know some people might call it a warm call. Some people might call it a cold call. It's kind of up in the air. So that's never going to die. That is going to be maybe even more important as me, millennials, our group of individuals, we get more and more frightened and scared of being on the phone as a seller. And people start to hide more and more behind email. And obviously email will get less and less effective over time as well. Those somewhat warm calls, if you want to use that terminology, they're going to become more important than ever. Okay. What else do we have? Oh, ouch. I'm going through the comments on some of these previous episodes, and there's There's a little bit of hate there on a couple of them, which always makes me laugh, right? Who has the time to make a negative, unless it's constructive, right? Of, hey, I think the characters are stupid. I think the set is rubbish. The red is too bright. I think you're talking nonsense. Somewhat critical and useful feedback. But who has the time to just leave just spam or garbage, right? Okay. Demetrius, I've read the beginning of this question. I'm going to read the rest of it in my brain box before. Okay. I'm probably not going to know the answer to this question, but I'm going to read it because it seems like it's a good faith question. Demetrius asks this on YouTube. Hey, I have a serious question. I'm black, and every service business I start, I usually get most clients who are people of color. How do black people gain trust with more white clients? So I don't know where you are. I don't know the geopolitical implications of where you are and all that stuff, Demetrius. And it's a difficult question to answer from a 34-year-old white dude living in the UK, right? Because this sounds like, it almost sounds like cliche, and it sounds like pandering a little bit. But if someone's sat in front of me and they are, how do you phrase this so I can phrase it appropriately as well? People of color, right? If you're sat in front of me, Demetrius, maybe it's subconscious. Maybe I have some biases that I'm not aware of. I don't think so. But I don't care if you're black, right? I wouldn't hire you one way or the other, or if someone is white or of any other ethnicity. So where I'm going with this is, are you sure that this isn't in your own head, in that maybe there are cultural differences, maybe there are things that if you are hanging out with other African Americans in certain groups, categories, whatever it is, and you find that it's easier to sell to them, it could be from your side that you're more comfortable there, less comfortable elsewhere. You are assuming people have prejudices, whatever that word is, when that may or may not be true. So I would go into this conversation from the other way around and say, hey, look, you can't control whether you're trying to sell to white people, whatever color people, whatever ethnicities, and you're having less luck. I would just forget all that. I would just blank that out completely. And I know it's one thing for me to say this, it's a completely different thing in a different culture, in a different country, a different part of the world for other people to try and implement. But I would focus on what I can control. And I can't control whether, again, someone has opinions, views, or anything else that goes along with that. I would just take that out of my mind and I would just do more numbers. If I'm struggling to sell to, let's take race out of the equation for a minute. Let's just say I'm struggling to sell to rich people or small businesses or big companies or individual entrepreneurs rather than CEOs of multinational corporations. I would just do more of it. And at some point, something's going to stick. And at some point, you're going to have enough data to say, hey, maybe it isn't because of their ethnicity. Maybe it's because of this. And then, to be very frank, if it all comes down to ethnicity, you know who your customer is then. Just do more of that. There's plenty of people of colour to sell to if it fundamentally, and I don't believe this is true, but if it would fundamentally come down to that, then make life easier for yourself and sell to your best customers. And this is, again, nothing to do with race. If you're selling to rich person, poor person, this, that, 1, 2, 3, X, Y, Z, find who your buyers are, find where your buyers are spending time, and then just spend more time with them. Hope that helps. Probably didn't. But yeah, long answer short. Focus on yourself and what you can control, which is your output. Cool. How do I earn more trust with clients? We can touch on this. A lot of trust is down to first impressions, right? So if you're showing up appropriately dressed, groomed, all that kind of stuff. I wouldn't show up to a rugby shirt for a meeting, a Zoom meeting with the folks from HubSpot, who are our main partner on over at salesman.org, right? Maybe I won't wear a shirt every time, but I definitely have like a smart polo shirt on or something more appropriate, right? I'd probably have a shave. I'd probably be cleaned up slightly. I'm slightly disheveled as I chat with you on this week's live chat. But showing up, big smile on your face, you got to come across as sharp, as intelligent, as humble. These are how you build and earn trust in the modern B2B world that we live in. The buyer doesn't expect you to know everything. You can Google whatever you don't know right this second. All the buyer wants from you is, well, they want two things. They want unique insights that they can't Google, right? You're selling this product. You've sold more of this product than perhaps anyone else in the marketplace other than your internal competitors, the other salespeople within your organization, right? So you have way more experience of that buyer's journey than what they will ever have, because they're never going to do this journey like 5, 10, 50 times a week like what you're doing and what you're guiding people through. So they want unique insights that only you can provide, and then they just want someone to hold their hand, right? The sales process is 60, 70, 80. It'll be 90% complete by the time the buyer speaks to a salesperson by 5, 10 years from now. All they want by the time they're engaging with you, unless you're creating content, unless you're doing social selling, unless you're trying to shape the buyer behavior at the top of the sales process, which will become more and more important over time, right? But if you're not proactively doing that, they just want you to hold their hand. They want you to be their safety net. So if you can provide them great insights, actionable insights, things that they don't know, that's a good book title. The things that you don't know, right? That's what you should be offering them. And on the flip side of that, you're there to hold them hand, you're there to guide them through the sales process, you get to get them from one side to another to be their safety net. And that's essentially what you're being paid for as a modern B2B salesperson. Okay, I'm going to answer one more, and then we're going to wrap up because we need to get rocking and rolling. Okay, the Musk Bros. The Musk Bros ask, hey, quick question. When do you wake up and how do you start your day? Typically, do you read the news? Do you browse the internet, connect online, listen to music before getting in to work? Or do you start right away? This is the longest question I've probably ever read on the show. Or do you start right away? I find sometimes I read the news, check my stocks, watch 1 or 2 videos, get sucked into it. You've answered your own question here. What you just described is the dumbest way to start your day of all time, the Musk Bros on YouTube, right? I get up 6 o'clock every day. My girlfriend doesn't like this, but the alarm goes off. I've got a Lumi alarm clock, so it brightens the room gradually for like 10 minutes or so before the alarm goes off. It's a really horrible, irritating alarm. My girlfriend doesn't like this, but when it goes off, I just throw the covers off me, keep trying to keep them on air as best you can, and then I get up. Downstairs, get up, have a wee, brush my teeth, go downstairs, take the dog out the crate, walk the dog, come back in, have a cup of coffee, and I don't go... Maybe this is a lie. I try not to go on the internet. Maybe I'll watch one YouTube video with my coffee, and it's nothing news related. It would be some technology video, or maybe like a motivational video of whoever's the person of interest that I'm following at the moment in time. Like, I'm really into Seth Godin at the moment. I'm rereading a load of his books, and he's got tons of great talks on YouTube. So I'll watch 10-15 minutes of that. I'll have my coffee, and then I go back upstairs. I sit down and I start what I call the MIT, the most important task of the day, right? So what was it this morning? I'll be super real. I'll pull up my calendar. Yeah, so today I've signed up for Hrefs, which is a search engine optimization keyword website, and I needed to pull some new keywords for some podcast content that's going out today. That's the most important thing. If I get that one thing done this morning, the rest of the day is a win, because once I've done that, I know that I'm going to publish all the content because I've done all the hard work up front, which is all the laborious stuff, right? Don't check the news. Don't check your stocks. Why are you checking your stocks? Are you trading stocks every day? Then it's your job. That's probably your most important task of the day. That happens whenever the bell opens, 9 o'clock New York time, whenever it is, 8 o'clock New York time. If you're doing anything other than your most important task, during that moment when your brain is clear, right? You can hack some of this a little bit. Perhaps you meditate at lunchtime. It formats your brain, dumps everything from your short-term memory into long-term memory, or just dumps it all together. You can have a power nap. I know a couple of very successful CEOs that I spend a tiny little bit of time with. They will, in their office, they'll have a cup of coffee at lunch, they'll have a 20-minute power nap, and then they use that as their big reset button, so they can get on with more work in the afternoon. But to check the news, what is the news? It's a bunch of stuff that's happening elsewhere in the planet, right? If something's relevant to you, you wouldn't be hearing it on internet TV, on TV or the internet. You'd be hearing it from your local newspaper, maybe. You'd be hearing it from the people you engage with. You'd be hearing this gossip. You'd be hearing that gossip. That's what we're wired to consume. You're wired to consume what's going on within the tribe. Is it Dunbar's number, 150 people? Your brain literally doesn't have the wiring, it doesn't have the capacity to engage with content that's going on outside of that, other than there's a tribe coming to murder us all. Your brain can deal with that, right? So when you see all the stuff going on in Afghanistan right now that you don't have any control of, I'm assuming this, you're not a politician, you're not in the military, the Air Force, whatever it is, you're not dealing with humanitarian aid, or you're not working for a business that's dealing with refugees, all important things, but I'm assuming you're not involved with any of them. Then why are you watching content in Afghanistan? It doesn't affect you. It literally does not affect you. Why are you watching stuff? This is the argument I had with Donald Trump and politics last year in the US. Why are you concerned with all this stuff? It just doesn't matter. Just get on with your life, crush it in sales, and then you can go into politics when you've made 20 million quid, 5 million quid, you're semi-retired at 45, and you can kill the game. So there we go. Hopefully that was useful. But yeah, don't be going on news, checking stocks. As I said, I'll watch a Seth Godin video at the moment, but don't get sucked into it. You need to have clear boundaries. You need to define what you want to achieve each morning, the night before, if possible, and that will set you up for a productive day. And so with that, I will love you and leave you all. I appreciate the questions, as always. If you've got any questions and you're watching this after the fact, not live, drop them in the box below this video and I will answer them next week. And with that, I will speak to you all on next week's Selling Made Simple live chat. Cheers, everyone.